Hey, Ground Zero, what is up? Welcome to Jersey Night. Again, I'm sure you've been welcomed a million times. I have to tell you a little story. I didn't have a jersey for tonight. It wasn't in, I just don't have one. And so I was trying to borrow them from friends. I couldn't find one. And then I accidentally bought a jersey of someone who got into trouble. Like, they were doing something bad and they got into trouble. And someone told me today I couldn't wear the jersey because I couldn't promote the person. So I came here tonight with no jersey to wear for Jersey Night. I was feeling horrible. And then a volunteer at Lino just had an extra one and just handed it to me and was like, here, and this is it. Are you guys loving this jersey? Is this so great? Little side bonus for those of you, you're not here, you can't tell. Smells so good. She clearly washed it. So awesome. I am so pumped that it is Jersey Night and that I got a jersey so I didn't have to feel lame. But besides being pumped that it is Jersey Night, I am also pumped because we are kicking off a new teaching series tonight, and the series is called Different. Now, I need to ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you personally are just a little bit different than everybody else? Like maybe when other people were born, they got like a manual for life that told them how to like act and talk and dress, but you somehow got like a different manual than everybody else. I felt like this just a couple weeks ago. It was like 2 weeks ago. And I was trying to go to a coffee shop to actually write this message. I do that a lot. I go to coffee shops and write messages. And I was in Minneapolis trying to go to one of my favorite coffee shops. It's called Spy House. And I wanted to go there because I know Spy House. I go there a lot. So I know what I like to drink there. My drink is called the Spy Girl, which is just a sweet name for a coffee drink, okay? And I know where I like to sit at Spy House. And I know where to find the Wi-Fi password for the day. They always write it on the chalkboard right next to the register. And so I was trying to go to Spy House, but you won't believe this. I got off on the wrong exit in Minneapolis, and I got like a little bit lost. This is actually kind of embarrassing to say, especially to the adults in the room, but I was like mildly lost in Minneapolis. And I was trying to turn around, and as I was turning around to go back to where I thought Spy House was, I saw another coffee shop. And the coffee shop, I heard of it before. I'd never been there before, but my friends had said they like going there. So I was like, why don't I just go here instead? It'll be fine. I don't know what the Wi-Fi password is or whatever, but it'll be fine. The minute I walked into this coffee shop, I realized that I was way out of place, okay? First of all, everyone in the whole place looked much cooler than me, okay? They were all wearing either black or gray, and they had, like, the women were wearing, like, excessive, really hip jewelry, or, like, mysteriously had their hair in front of their face in a really cool way, and everyone had skinny jeans on with, like, the right amount of rips in them. I, on the other hand, was wearing my snow boots. It was snowy, so I wore my snow boots. I had jeans with no rips in them at all and a bright orange shirt, okay? So I did not fit in at all, and I was like feeling very uncomfortable. And then on top of all that, the coffee drink that I wanted to get, I didn't know what they meant. There was like one that was called like mini miel, and I had to ask the barista, I was like, can you just explain what this is to me? I felt so different and so out of place. You guys, it can be horrible to feel like that. It is just not fun to feel different. Have you ever felt like that before? Like you show up to some place and everyone's wearing some kind of outfit that you just didn't get the memo and you're not wearing that. Or I don't know, you're in gym class and everyone seems to know how to play the game, but you don't know how to play it. Or you're on a sports team and everyone seems good and you're not that good. Or everyone just seems to like have it together, but you just internally, you feel like you don't have it together. When you feel like that, it can make you feel alienated, it can make you feel isolated, and even unwanted at times. That's what it feels like sometimes to be different. But tonight, what I want us to do is I want us to tackle this tonight. And I want to see if we can learn one truth, just one truth tonight, that will make us feel confident and sure of ourselves in those moments when we are a little bit different than everybody else. And here's that one truth. God created us to be different. Did you know this? God created us to be different. Check out this verse from the book of Romans. This is the guy Paul talking. He says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn what God's will is for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Now, In order to understand this verse from the book of Romans, we have to kind of get the background of the guy Paul who wrote it. So Paul, for his whole life, was basically in what I would call the cool kids club, okay? He was popular, he was smart, he was wealthy. In fact, he was a part of what would have been considered like the most elite group in society at that time. It was called the Pharisees. So he was one of the Pharisees. And Paul thought that he loved being a part of that group because money and power sort of have that way of making you feel like, I think this is good, I'm in the right group. But what was missing from Paul's life was a sense of purpose. He didn't have really anything to live for other than himself. And what else was missing for him was just joy and a reason to live besides just money and power and popularity. And he didn't feel like the friends that he was with necessarily gave him that feeling either. But all of that changed for Paul when he met Jesus. So one day, Paul was traveling. He was on this dirty, dusty road, traveling from one city to the other city, when a light shone down on him, okay, like a bright light, and Jesus started talking to him from the light. Now, if that sounds totally insane to you, that's because it is totally insane, okay? But it is the way that Jesus used to get his attention and to tell Paul, to communicate to him that his life could be different. And that conversation that Jesus and Paul had that day changed absolutely everything for him. That day, Paul became different. And he traded in kind of his old way of life where he was living for himself and his own popularity to living for something much bigger and much better than himself. The new, different Paul became one of the most inspiring people ever to walk the planet. In fact, Paul, after he became different, wrote some verses in the Bible that you have probably heard before that have basically blown the minds and hearts of hundreds of thousands of people throughout history. And I just want to read a few of those inspiring verses that he wrote. One of them you've probably heard at every wedding you've ever been to. This is Paul, the new Paul. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Or maybe you've heard these verses at a funeral. He wrote these too. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Or another verse, that's the last one I'll share with you, just one that is personally really inspiring for me that I just kind of keep in my mind. If God is for us, who can be against us? All these verses written by Paul after he had been transformed. And he was transformed because of a connection that he had with Jesus that gave him permission to be different. And not just regular different, awesome different, confident different. The kind of different that is hopeful and courageous and inspires other people to be different. The kind of different that I want to be. And perhaps the kind of different that you also want to be. Guys, God created us to be different. And if you embrace that, you can and will change your life to be so much better. I have a friend named Rachel, and when she was your age, she was having a very rough time. Her parents were fighting a lot, and they started the process of going to get a divorce. And in order to escape the pain of that situation, Rachel began experimenting with drinking and drugs. And that got her into a bad group of friends, and it began a string of destructive friendships and unhealthy relationships with guys. And on the outside, I think if you would have seen her, when people looked at her, I think they thought that she was popular and that she was cool. But on the inside, Rachel was really hurting. Until one day in high school, so imagine this is like a lot of years that she was hurting. In high school, one of her boyfriend's parents invited her to come here to church, to Eagle Brook. And she went for some reason. And when she got here, she heard about Jesus. And she heard that he loved her without condition. And she heard that he was willing to forgive her of anything and everything that she'd ever done wrong in her entire life. And she made a decision to place her faith in Jesus and to follow him. And that decision changed everything for her. And Rachel became different. Now, I'm not saying she was no longer Rachel, she was still Rachel, but she was a different version of Rachel, a better version of herself. So when she was struggling with something, instead of turning to unhealthy relationships or alcohol, she turned to God. And it took a while, but over time she started to make new friends here at church, and she quit doing drugs, and she started dating this really nice guy who actually worked here on staff. He actually sang a song here at Lino a minute ago. And they got married, and they had 4 kids, and I brought a picture. This is Rach and her amazing family. This is what happened. I have to tell you, I met Rachel well after this had happened, well after she had made the decision to follow Jesus. Actually, we work here together at church now. And when someone told me that she used to be a person who was into drinking and drugs and unhealthy relationships and was in the wrong crowd, I was just like, I don't believe it. Like, the person I know is not that person. She is the most fun and inspiring and joyful person that I know. In fact, she even is one of the online hosts for online church on the weekend. I brought a picture of her and TJ hosting online church. Literally, she is like a ball of joy to be around. Do you guys remember the verse we read earlier from Paul? Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you'll learn what God's will is for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. And Rachel has been living out this verse. And believe me, her life is transformed, and it is far better than she could ever have imagined. So tonight, if that sounds good to you, if you're like, I'm honestly, Joelle, that sounds really good to me. I want to embrace the fact that God has created me to be different. If that's you, then there are 4 words from Paul's verse that are going to help us to embrace that difference. The first 2, don't copy. This is powerful because middle school tends to be a time when we copy each other. So we dress alike and we talk alike and we watch the same kinds of things and we have the same hobbies and interests. And actually, none of that is that bad, okay? So if you really like basketball and your friends really like basketball, don't join a bowling league just so that you'll be different than them. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being a different kind of basketball player. Hear me when I say this. What I'm talking about is being the kind of basketball player who has respect for their coaches and even the refs. The kind of basketball player that when someone else falls down from the other team, you reach out your hand to help them up. The kind of basketball player who keeps their language clean and who earns respect from their teammates by working so hard and by building their teammates up instead of talking trash and tearing people down. Do you get what I'm saying? When we are different, the way God has created us to be different, we do what we do, but we do it in a different way. So when others are behaving badly, we don't copy them. Instead, we are set apart and we are leaders and we act like people who have had an encounter with Jesus and we are not the same anymore. Do you hear what I'm saying? If you want to be different, the way God created you to be different, first 2 words, don't copy. Here's the second 2 words. Let God. Letting God transform you just means that you put him in charge. That he's the leader and you're not the leader anymore. And so the changes that happen in you come as a result of God starting those changes inside of you. If we want to embrace being different and become the kind of inspiring and courageous and hope-filled and kick-butt kind of leaders that God has created us to be, we are going to need God's help to do that. And I know this because I tried to do it without God's help when I was in middle school. I instead of allowing God to make changes in me, or for me to make kind of subtle changes that I thought would honor God and then let people notice and let people ask me questions, instead of doing that, what I did is I just told people, okay? And I'm not super proud of this, but when I was in middle school and people would say, are you going to the party this weekend? I would say, like, I don't go to those kind of parties, you guys. Or they would, like, invite me to do something on Sunday, and I was like, I'm busy on Sunday. I go to church on Sundays, okay? You don't even like me now. You're like, I don't like her anymore, okay? That was middle school me. I'm over it, okay? But the thing is, you shouldn't do it that way, right? You should allow God, let God to be the one to make the changes that are subtle, sometimes very big. And then allow people to watch that and notice and ask you questions and wonder about God through it. So when you're sitting in the lunchroom, just picture this. You're sitting in the lunchroom, you're with your friends, everyone's laughing, it's going great. You see someone out of the corner of your eye, they're all by themselves, maybe they're new to school or whatever. And just a little voice inside your head prompts you and it's just like, hey, you should get up and you should just go over there and you should just sit with them. Don't make a big deal. Don't be like, you guys, I'm going to go sit with a person who's all by themselves. No, you just get up and you just take your tray or whatever you got and you sit down next to them and you just do it because God prompted you to do it. And you just let people see that. Or if all of your friends, you're hanging out with all your friends and one of your friends starts acting weird and everybody decides we're just done with that person. We're just ditching them. We're just not friends with them anymore. You keep inviting them to stuff. You ask them every day how they're doing. And you are there for them when no one else is there for them. Because that is God making you different the way he created you to be. And when you do that, when you allow God to do that, he will make little changes in you and he'll make big changes in you and you will become different in the best possible way. 4 words for us to embrace being different. Don't copy and let God. I have to tell you, when I was writing this, I was sitting at the coffee shop where I was totally out of place, okay? I was feeling different. And you know what I thought? I thought, my hope is in these Ground Zero students. My hope is in you for this. Because you are growing up in a world where everybody is doing the same thing, right? And everybody is talking bad about that person. Everybody is using that language, and everybody's watching that stuff. And I pray and I hope that you will be inspired to be different the way that God created you to be. And like Paul and like my friend Rachel, you can lead the way and be transformed and show people how awesome it is to follow a God who is so stinking good. I'm going to pray for you, and then you can head out to hang time. God, thank you for being here tonight and for reminding us that you created us to be different and that it's good for us to be different. Help us, Lord, not to copy when the behaviors of others is bad. And help us to let you lead in our life. We adore you. Thank you for a fun night. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a great night, you guys. Bye.